by such developments at a broader cultural or organizational level. Additionally, actually, there's been some research in moral psychology that suggests that users have a tendency to use machines as a what's been called a moral buffer in order to kind of shield themselves from reproach or responsibility. In any case, a third reason that new technologies often act as central drivers in the creation or reproduction of challenging new ethical issues is that, contrary to the common opinion that technologies are simply kind of value-neutral tools that remain solely at the command of their user, technologies are actually far from neutral in this respect. Rather, they're prone to embodying certain values, often those of their designers, and delivering certain affordances to their users that modify behaviour in unpredictable and sometimes undesirable ways. One interesting and contested example of this in medicine comes from what the medical historian Stanley Joel Reiser has labelled modern technological distancing, according to which the increasing use of technological artifacts in the delivery of medical care actually shifts the attention of physicians away from the subjective elements of their patients' suffering towards only those elements that are objectively measurable. And while this has had or generated some significant advantages, it has also led to a practice of medicine that is more focused upon what the physician Abraham Verghese has interestingly labelled the eye patient. That is the kind of digital collection of scans, tests, measurements, and so on that merely represent a patient rather than the patient themselves. And indeed, this phenomenon is one of the reasons behind the growing calls for explicitly patient-centered medicine, both from within medicine, that is from doctors and other practitioners, and from without, that is patients. So what can we make of this? Well, I think one of the primary take-home points is this. New medical technologies are being designed and tested by individuals with increasingly specialised knowledge, largely excluding lay members of the public from thorough engagement and evaluation of their features and implications. That is, until they have already been deployed in medical settings. For this reason, engineers and computer scientists that are working in this area hold a great deal of responsibility for the future of medicine, the future of healthcare and well-being in general. And this is because small, seemingly insignificant choices in, say, the design of a system can have enormous consequences once these technologies are scaled up and deployed at a broader level. So it's crucial that individuals working in this area recognise their moral responsibility in this respect and proactively grapple with the ethical, social and even political implications of their creations at the earliest possible stages of research and development. So let me now just quickly turn to AI in medicine and finish up there. Recent advancements in this field, particularly in the subdiscipline of machine learning, have incited a renewed popular interest in the application of AI in medicine and healthcare environments. AI has shown tremendous potential in such tasks as diagnosis, treatment recommendation, risk prediction, event prediction, remote monitoring and analysis, robotic surgery even, robotic caregiving, medical research, and so on and so forth. But these advancements have also introduced a variety of new concerns amongst doctors, designers, ethicists, policy makers, and so on. And what I want to argue here briefly is that the ethical challenges in medicine are not mere technical problems that can be overcome through better, more accurate, more robust models. AI ethics, in other words, is not reducible to safety concerns, according to which the solution is simply to alter the technical features of a system in order to reduce its margin for error, for example, or to reduce its likelihood of breaking down at dangerous moments. Rather, the use of AI in medicine demands an analysis of our values and the various trade-offs between those values that the use of this technology in medicine will necessitate. And let me give you two examples of this. The first is that the productive use of AI in medicine generates... sorry, one sec. Pardon me, my document just... Sorry. The first is that the productive use of AI in medicine generates a challenging conflict between the accuracy and effectiveness of these systems in clinical practice and concerns over patient privacy and confidentiality. Compared to human beings, machine learnings at this stage are incredibly slow learners. Instead of the 2 or 3 times it may take for a child to understand that, touching a stove, for example, isn't the best idea, it tends to hundreds of encounters with similar phenomena before a machine learning model can reliably identify a particular correlation. The implication of this is that these machines and systems are incredibly data hungry, with the problem being that patient data is largely protected under existing norms and laws of patient confidentiality. The interesting moral question here then is that it's currently the interesting moral question here that is currently under heavy debate is, do we have a moral obligation to dispense with our own privacy concerns and share our healthcare data for the common good? A second example is the effects of AI upon health inequity. The connection between health inequity and algorithmic bias is fairly clear here. Biased outcomes can result from the use of machine learning models through a number of channels, for instance, skewed or unrepresented training data, erroneous user interpretations, the use of a particular model in an inappropriate environment or context, and so on. Famously, some machine learning models have been shown to perform better on light-skinned patients than upon dark-skinned patients. But what I want to suggest is concerns over health inequity and AI extend a lot further than this. For instance, the risks and benefits of new technologies are rarely, if ever, distributed evenly over a population. And it's often the most powerful groups who stand to benefit from new technologies due to their distinctive capacity to guide the prioritization of health research and the use of medical resources. And at present, I see no reason to believe that AI won't produce or reproduce this pattern. Furthermore, the addition of new technologies and the intensification of the use among existing technologies have been found to be one of the central drivers of inflated healthcare costs, a trend which has made healthcare increasingly unaffordable for poor and working class families. So the point is this: the use of AI in medicine has the potential to reproduce and even intensify current inequities in the accessibility of healthcare and the distribution of positive health outcomes. And the distinctively ethical and philosophical question here then is, how much inequality in the risks and benefits of AI in medicine are we willing to tolerate? So let me wrap up there just by quickly restating the main points of this talk. Firstly, technological innovation in medicine is one of the primary instigators of new and challenging ethical scenarios in medicine and healthcare. And this leads to my second point, that computer engineers and designers are in a unique position of influence and power, and therefore responsibility in the future of healthcare and the practice of medicine. Lastly, recent developments in medical AI generate challenges and tensions that are more than simply technical challenges. They are distinctively ethical challenges. They require a deeper reflection about what it is that we value from medicine and healthcare and what we are willing to sacrifice or tolerate in order to promote these values. And this is, I believe, a point that applies not only to AI, but to any significant technological innovation in the medical sphere. But I'll leave it there for today, and thank you for listening.
Okay. Thanks, Joshua. That was really informative. So we got some time for some questions now. So our first question is from Leia, and she asks, why do you think it is that today we are willing to accept risks in healthcare, i.e. humans making medical errors, but when it comes to AI, we are demanding perfection? Do you think that it is attributed to having the right motivations of trust?
I mean, trust is a very important question and a very important issue with AI. But I think one of the reasons that people are demanding a lot from AI is because, one of the reasons is the scalability of these systems. If, an AI system comes to surpass or match the performance of human experts, will want to deploy that system at a very broad scale so that we can maximize the benefit from this particular system. However, once a system is scaled to a very high degree, compared to a human being that when they make a mistake, they could kill, one or two people, an AI system that makes a mistake at this kind of level of scale could harm, hundreds, thousands, millions. So it is very important that we demand more than we do from human physicians from AI for this particular reason.
Okay, thanks. Another question we have is from Julie. Do you think or believe a middle ground can be reached? The more we use these technologies, the more we give authority to it. What is the outcome you or we should aim for to keep meaningful human control?
I think one of the models that we can use for this, luckily in the aviation industry, there's been a lot of research into the effects of automation and human-computer interaction. And through extensive testing and extensive research, they've been able to figure out various ways in which elements of aviation can be automated fairly safely and actually improve the safety overall of flight. So I think, and this is something that is fairly common, or a fairly common suggestion in the literature, that when thinking about how to perhaps not automate medicine, but defer some kind of decision-making authority to machines in this respect, the insights from automation in aviation can serve to produce this kind of middle ground where we're getting the benefits of these particular automated systems without some of their kind of troubling effects, automation bias, for example.
Awesome. Dr. Andrew Rodder asks, what are the most important people that need to take action to ensure that AI is rolled out appropriately? What are the responsibilities of different groups of people?
Well, of course, as I mentioned, the designers have a particular responsibility. Also, one other stakeholder, I suppose, worth mentioning is the hospitals that implement these systems. A comment that has been made when speaking of maintaining accountability with these particular systems, or a problem that's been identified by some authors, is that hospitals can deploy these systems without holding any kind of legal responsibility or accountability themselves for the errors that they may produce or the negative effects that may result from them. So hospitals need to really grapple with this and really take seriously the idea of taking explicit responsibility for the possible negative effects that these systems could produce in medical practice.
Okay, that's great. We have Hermanth who asks, considering that data has seen extreme interest over the years and is important to make any machine learning improvements in the industry, will there be an exclusive regulatory government agency to monitor and have security over how these data is used?
I'm actually not sure. I'm not sure how that'll play out, and I'm not sure that anyone would be able to tell you. It's certainly an option that we could have a centralized repository of data that people could draw from in order to train these models. Let me think. One of the challenges there is that people sometimes get concerned about one of the justifications for promoting privacy as a value is to, protect oneself from interference from government agencies. And so the people who take this line of justification for the value of privacy might have strong objections to the idea that we would simply give all of our data over to the government, particularly with concerns about, AI has been used in the distribution of healthcare resources. And this is one of the areas that is the government distribution of healthcare resources in kind of medical benefits, disability support services, and so on. And this has had some kind of troubling implications for marginalised groups who find it increasingly difficult to get access to these services. So one thing that people might worry about with a centralised repository or a governmental centralised repository of data is that it simply gives governments more ways to make it difficult for people in vulnerable situations to receive the benefits that they're entitled to.
Awesome. So we'll do one more question from Professor John Forsyth, who asks, do you think engineers are sufficiently trained in bioethics?
I mean, I know there is some kind of training in ethics and engineering ethics in engineering disciplines, but I think that the short answer is no. I think in order to be able to really take seriously the ethical implications of the technologies that engineers are designing, bioethics education is more needed than ever, and it is something that is largely lacking from the engineering curriculum, from my understanding.
Okay, well, we're going to wrap up with the questions there. We've had a great input, so I'm sure Josh will be happy to answer any more questions after the session in the social lounge, or if we have time at the end of the session. So we'll save your questions, and we'll thank Joshua again so much for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
So moving on, we'll now want to bring up our next speaker, Jeffrey Jaja, who will talk to you about cerebral palsy and technology for its and the use of technology for it. So take it away, Jeffrey.
Okay, are my slides working? Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, hi guys, my name is Jeffrey Yahya. I'm a second year engineering and commerce student from Monash University. And today I would like to present my research on how technology is playing a role in rehabilitating cerebral palsy patients. So I have actually presented these slides 2 days ago in ICA. So that's the International Undergraduate International Conference for Undergraduate Research. And this is my second time presenting regarding this. And as an engineer, I find it ideally interesting about how engineering plays a role in healthcare, especially with the current COVID-19 situation. And I hope my research will actually inspire many of you engineers out there to work in the field of health. So what is cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy, or often shortened to CP, is a type of brain injury often diagnosed when young patients have very limited voluntary movement. With this injury, which can also be classified as a disability, posture and speech can be very difficult, which is why it is important to rehabilitate them. The good thing about this injury is that it is non-progressive, which means that it wouldn't get worse in the long run, making the task for many engineers easier. So as for defining rehabilitation, according to the Oxford Dictionary, rehabilitation is the action of restoring someone to health through training and therapy after addiction, illness, or imprisonment. In this case, we are restoring CP patients to normal from an illness. Proceeding to how we will rehabilitate patients, there are actually several devices that can be used to rehabilitate a patient, and most of them, such as tablets and toys, are used in our daily lives. However, as I introduce you to these devices, it does not explain my research. We want to know how these devices are used and what made engineers and physiologists alike choose these common devices to rehabilitate patients. So with that, I'm going to share with you 3 main methods that engineers use to rehabilitate CP patients. The first one may seem pretty obvious. It is when we use motors and prosthetics to assist patients to walk or move their wrist. These machines are already developed for people who have a broken ankle or need a rehabilitation for other reasons such as suffering from a fall and was unable to walk as a result. Patients can utilize these machines to also maintain their posture. This will allow CP patients to instantly do everyday tasks such as eating, playing with friends, and more. This is giving them more independence. Despite how obvious this method seems, I still believe it is a step worth taking for engineers to rehabilitate patients. Next up, what actually inspired me to conduct this research in the first place was because of this 13-year-old boy named Riley. After watching a documentary called Becoming Superhuman by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Movement, and Riley trained himself to control his eyes for several days, and with these sensors, it will detect his eye movement and get him to control the car by looking left to turn left and by looking right to turn right, for instance. So since his eyes have more voluntary movement than his arms or legs, it will allow him to have control of the car. Pretty awesome, huh? Entering the 21st century, we can never deafen our ears to the words virtual reality. This will bring patients into another dimension. Think of it as the movie Jumanji, where the main characters enter a different world and have the aim of defeating the villain. This method pretty much does the same. Here, we are allowing patients to correct their posture or their speech by playing a game. These games can be any type, such that players can score points if they can maintain their posture for a certain amount of time or articulate certain words correctly. In the long term, CP patients who are mostly kids will find it really fun to play with, but hopefully not addicting. Having shared with all of you 3 main methods that biomedical engineers can utilize to rehabilitate those with cerebral palsy, which method is the best for me? As you can see from this table, artificial support can be mass-produced, but patients may over-rely on equipment and in some cases may not achieve the purpose of rehabilitation. Repurposing sensors allows for self-reliance, but training patients to use their other sensors will be arduous and may take weeks or sometimes months. Getting them to enter a virtual world can allow them to forget about reality, but may be detrimental to the sense of sight or lead to other problems such as addiction in the long run. As you can see, all 3 methods that has its own pros and cons. So therefore, I cannot really choose one that stands out against the other 2. So all in all are equally important. From the research that I have conducted, I can come into the conclusion that there are infinite ways to rehabilitate a CP patient, whether it's through mobile apps, sensors, or even a VR device. These ways are infinite and no method is better than the other. I would like to add that beyond cerebral palsy, biomedical engineers are solving many health problems, which may include Lou Gehrig's disease, scoliosis, and more recently, COVID-19. And while they are challenging, we all have to note that there are many paths that lead to Rome, and no one path is the golden path to success. That is the end of my presentation, and if you would like to connect with me, I have here my email address and my LinkedIn if you could actually scan the QR code that I provide. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jeffrey. That was a really good presentation. So just a quick question I have is like, do you see and what do you think is like the next step that could be taken for like cerebral palsy and technology?
Okay, so these equipments are still new aside from the artificial support. So the next step I kind of believe would be we already have voice recognition when it comes to Siri, when it comes to Alexa, and we already have that infrastructure. And that is like and what we can actually do is to actually use AI to allow them to understand what kids or adults with cerebral palsy is trying to say out of the. So we are trying to train speech recognizing devices with AI, with and through machine learning, we can actually get them to derive what they're trying to say. And traditionally, as you can actually see from Stephen Hawking, they would actually type those words out, which would actually take time. If they were to like speak it out, that would be easier for them. So that I kind of feel that is pretty much the next step. And I also feel that the census may be a little bit too far away, but
Yep.
I believe the speech recognizing devices would be the next step.
That's really insightful. Nice work. I think we might have a question from Dr. John Forsyth, who we might bring up on stage.
Sure. Sorry if I have to stop sharing.
We'll see how that goes. Okay. I don't think it's working right now, so perhaps you'll be able to discuss this further after the end of the session. So we'll have a look out for that, Jeffrey, and I think we can move to our next presentation. So thank you very much, Jeffrey. It was a really good presentation.
Actually, if you do have a question, please feel free to private message me, and I'll try to answer them.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, thanks, Jeffrey.
All right,
so next up, no worries. So next up, we have our second undergraduate mentor talk presented by Wesley. So we'll let him take over. The stage is yours, Jeffrey.
Hi, can you guys hear me? Can you guys see the slides?
Yeah.
All right, amazing. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wesley. Today I'm gonna be presenting.
Wait.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Wesley. Could you try resharing? Perhaps your screen's a bit small. The slides appear.
Okay, sure, no worries. Sorry, give me a second.
No worries.
Would this be better?
Yep, perfect. Okay, take it away.
Alrighty. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wesley, and today I'm going to be presenting a very exciting research from someone I think most of you should know. He's the COO of Toucan Medical. He's a co-founder of MYMI, and he's currently a Army research assistant. And this research is by Santiago Beltran Diaz, and the name of the research is a new pipeline to automatically segment and semi-automatically measure bone length on 3D models obtained by computed tomography. Now, Santiago's research aims to incorporate artificial intelligence and medical research together in order to streamline and improve current research processes. So specifically, with regards to the estimation of bone length in mice. Now, artificial intelligence and medical research is an extremely exciting and rapidly growing area of interest. So, various applications of this technology includes measuring the extent of cirrhosis of liver, estimating bone implant progress, and identifying pathology through imaging. With regards to Santiago, the primary focus of his research is geared towards bone development. Now, to add some context to this, let me give you a brief background into bone growth research. An example that was brought up is the research on the catch-up bone of growth in mouse models. So researchers are able to inhibit growth on one side of the mouse, leading to an asymmetrical development. However, it was found that mice are able to compensate and adapt to its abnormal growth, and the bone structure becomes more symmetrical in the long run. Now, in order to obtain concrete data on this phenomenon, accurate measurement of skeletal structures are required. So the current procedure includes dissection of the specimens, followed by staining and clearing the cadavers, and lastly, manual measurement of the bone itself. Now, each step comes with its own set of issues. So firstly, the preparation and dissection is laborious and time-consuming, and the whole process takes about a week. Secondly, it's destructive. So the tissues can no longer be used for histological or molecular applications after that. And parallax error, which occurs when the eye is angled to the measurement of the markings, can occur as the bone length is measured on a 2D plane via a microscope. Now, this is where Santiago's research comes into play. And to simplify it, it's basically 3 stages. So firstly, you scan multiple whole animal samples in batches, and then you bulk process the scans with minimal user intervention. And this saves a lot of time and labor. And lastly, you extract linear measurements of the bone of interest. Now, the specific aim of this study that Santiago is going into is identifying optimal scanning conditions through the use of different parameters such as threshold, resolution, and time. So to go into a bit more specifics, it identifies standard conditions that yield low interbatch variability, obtain versatile pipelines that could be applied with minimal variation, and lastly, be precise enough to detect small phenotypes, such as 5 to 10% bone length differences. Now, this is the program that he developed, or he and his team, short for Basilisk, and it essentially uses a software called Micro CT Mimics Innovation Suite. And his program Basilisk runs on this software. And this software was used because it's versatile, it's widely used, and it's compatible with Python as well. So on the right is essentially a small snapshot of all the steps that the program will do for you. And I have a small GIF that would go a bit more into detail. So it asks you to select a point on the right humerus, which is a bone. You just scroll up and down and then select the bone. And what happens, it creates this 3D reconstruction of all the bones. Over here on the right, you can see a specific bone and them measuring from point to point. And on the bottom right-hand side, they give you the exact measurement of each bone in a text file. So I think this is pretty amazing. And the advantages of Basilisk is that it's non-invasive. So there's minimal destruction of tissue, which can be used for other research. There's minimal human input, and it can process multiple samples. So it's time and labor. And the processing time from start to finish is 4 to 5 hours instead of a week. And lastly, because it uses a 3D image, it eliminates parallax error. So it's much more accurate compared to a manual measurement. Now, these advantages of basilisks are solutions to the shortcomings of the current dissection procedures. So, looking to the future, the main challenge now would be what happens if we could automate it more. Of course, it comes with some ethical dilemmas that Joshua has talked about. But specifically for this context, identifying each bone without human input. And next, we can start to extrapolate it. So that includes prosthetic behaviors, such as bone integration, as well as bone loosening. Now, overall, this is Santiago. So overall, Santiago's research is an amazing step towards an increasingly accurate and streamlined approach that could potentially have widespread uses in the medical research and beyond. So this is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for your time, and it was a pleasure to present such an amazing research.
Great work, Wesley. That was a really good presentation. Seems like you've had a really great experience working with Santiago. So I think we're going to just move on to our next presentation. So thank you for the presentation. And up next, we have Professor Daphne, who will be presenting about human-centered design in a clinical healthcare setting. So whenever you're ready, Daphne.
Yep, you can go, Nada.
I'm going to share. I'm disabled at the moment, Leah.
One second, I will get that fixed for you. Sorry about that. Can everyone hear the audio fine?
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, beautiful. They can hear you fine.
Okay, fantastic. My share screen is post disabled.
Oh, try that again.
Okay. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, just give this moment. Lovely. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me today to speak about the lab that we run, the Design Health Co-Lab, and particularly speak about human-centered design, which is our approach to the healthcare challenges that we're faced with. Just a little bit about myself. I'm coming from a industrial design background. I've had mainly my career in professional practice, and I joined Monash University about 5 years ago as a practice professor and to start this lab. So today I was going to talk about a little bit about our lab, just to introduce the Design Health Co-Lab, and move quickly into the human-centered design methodology we use, which is pretty indicative of human-centered design methodology, the double diamond. And then I'll be sharing with you through some project examples, design research tools, and just highlighting some that might be interesting for you to consider moving forward in your explorations. So firstly, about our team, our lab. So I really like to acknowledge the team behind everything we'll be talking about and showing you today. So together with myself, Mark Armstrong is a co-director of the Health Co-Lab, and he's also coming from a practice background. And then we have a team of design researchers, a lot of industrial designers, but slowly we're accumulating the other design competencies that we need to tackle the challenges that we're faced with, so communication, interaction design, and many others. I'm highlighting here in green our adjunct professors, which are really key to us undertaking our research. So the top line there are adjuncts that we have in hospital groups, hospital organisation, and they really help us to undertake our research. And of course we have faculties and industry collaborators who are really part of our team moving into our projects. So over the last 5 years, I have to highlight the fantastic staff that we got in the first couple of years collaborating with MYMI, who, you know, as Mark and I really come into the Monash University from industry, we really needed to get connected quickly, and working with MYMI enabled us to start working on some really interesting MedTech products that we put forward as, unmet clinical needs by clinical partners. And then, of course, throughout these explorations and others, we've been connected with industry on different projects. So if you think about our research contribution, what we do at Monash Art Design and Architecture, the strategy is to have research labs that are really aligned with, particularly with the university's strategy to create impact in the world. So we do that by undertaking translational design. So hopefully we get involved in the fantastic research that's going on around Monash University early enough so that by the time a technology is getting to a point of, quite some maturity, we've already got in principle, prototype which demonstrates how it might be used in healthcare. And our main methodology, of course, is around bringing people into the centre of our investigations using design, human-centred design. If we look over the last 5 years, when we first started that green area there, we were really from 2015 up until last year, a lot of our work was really involved in MedTech products, so singular product designs where we would get involved in collaborating and working together with our technology industry partners to eventually arrive at a product which met the people's needs or the users' needs at the centre of the problem, and arriving at a design prototype or a design pro to test how it's working in reality, and then at some point handing it off to see how it goes in the real world, continue to be developed by a commercial partner usually, or they're still in development because it takes up quite some time, as you know, to develop products and get them out into the world. But really, especially last year, we saw that transition into what we call experience design solutions, because as we know, data, AI, all of the new technologies that are now available to us. And if you think about the complexities of the challenges that we're facing in healthcare, we need more than just a singular product. We really need a systems approach and to achieve sometimes the behavioural change that we're asking people to do by using the systems that we're proposing. And the images there I'm showing you is of a hand hygiene exploration which has been in development now for 2 to 3 years, where it's really a systems approach where we're trying to tackle the problems, a big problem in our healthcare system of hand hygiene compliance and stopping that the rate of infection that goes on in hospitals around hand hygiene. And of course that's coming into an extra focus now since we've had our COVID circumstance over the last 6 months. So this is where we're at the moment. So what we talk about is creating experience now that improve healthcare outcomes for people. So that's our focus. And we use that, we talk about humanising technology. So technology is ubiquitous, and we really want to make that technology almost invisible behind a very human experience of people interacting with the products that we're, or services, whatever they are, that we're doing before them. So over the years, our research has fallen into 5 themes. So this is how we're categorising them. So of course our medical device design area, so the MedTech device is a strong area where we've had quite a bit of work going on, and will remain having work. So a lot of our work in healthcare is around designing devices that help in that healthcare service. Healthcare experience, digital health, healthy living, and we've got behaviour change there, only to say that a lot of our things that we're designing sometimes involves around nudging some sort of behaviour, and a change of behaviour in the people that we're working with. And underpinning all of these is a deep understanding of people's needs, of course, basic ergonomics, and human factors as well. So there are a lot of different articulations, if you like, of design process, but they usually follow these four stages. There's design thinking, which will have these 4 stages, maybe slightly differently articulated, but we tend to refer to the double diamond that was created by the UK Design Council back in the early 90s, and there's a lot written about it. So if you're interested, I'd suggest you go and have a look at it. But we like it because the double diamond itself represents the divergent, convergent nature of design exploration very well. And we like it because, it really focuses on that first diamond, if you like, which is around discovering and defining. So the discovery and define stage is all about, in discovery, trying to find out as much as you can about the problem, the people involved in the area of research, the context, everything that's out there, and then trying, our aim is to really empathise with the people at the centre of the design challenge. Because the only way we can truly meet people's needs is if we can really step into their shoes and really understand the problem from their point of view. And then we try and interpret all of the information that we gather and start to understand and pinpoint exactly what the issue is. Because sometimes that can change from the general problem that we offered at the beginning to actually what are the real challenges here. And then we can carry on with moving on to concept development and hopefully onto something that we can then test and learn from and move forward with. So I thought I'd maybe step through an actual project just to give you an impression of the types of tools that were used in these cases. So we did a project with a company called Multigate, a couple of years ago now, and it was all around venous access. So looking at the IV cannula, and the challenge put towards us was really redesigning the experience of the IV cannula. The problem with the existing IV cannula was that the way it's put on a patient, the way it's used at the moment, can be quite ineffective. And the ineffective treatment in Australia is a heavy burden on the healthcare system because if IV cannulas are not taken out or if they get infected, they lead to all sorts of complications, which then escalates problems for the patient, of course, but also the cost of the health system. What we learned from our clinical partners at Monash Health was that actually 50% of IVs are inserted, that are inserted and are never used because they're kind of put in just in case by other people. So when a patient arrives in the ED, for example, and a nurse might deem it necessary to put a cannula in place because it might be needed later by the clinician. And then the clinician might not even use it. So there's all of these instances where they might not even be used. And then if they are used, 1 in 3 of them fail before the treatment is completed. So lots of issues to address. So the challenge was for us to see if we could innovate the system of venous access and really take care of that infection control. So how do we minimise the infection that occurs at the moment and also take care of maximising the efficiency and compliance of use of IV cannulation? Because it's not a straightforward procedure and it comes with quite some risk. So thinking back to this double diamond, we'll walk through, if you like, the discovery phase at the beginning. So this is a view on what we do to start with, is try and gather all the background information about the current system, what it looks like at the moment, what's involved in actually cannulating a person, all that background information, state of the art as it exists now. We would do a competitor analysis, see what's already out there in the market. We'd also look at what we call analogous insights. So what other industries or areas can we look at that are outside of the direct subject of investigation, but we might learn something from it that we can apply back into the area that we're looking at now. So, we looked at veterinary science, we looked at the science behind hand hygiene and many other things. So then a large part of our investigation is learning from understanding the context. So going into a hospital and understanding what's going on. Now that's been quite challenging, as you can imagine, over the last 6 months. So in an ideal world, our research is largely qualitative in nature, although there is a place for quantitative research, but our research is largely qualitative. So we try and engage with the people that are involved in the circumstance in smaller numbers, but in deeper engagements. We set up interviews, if you like, where we can have discussions with the people involved in this problem. So we usually talk about 8 or 10, maybe 12 interviews that we would, or discussions that we would have with the different types of people involved. And these are set up in the form of empathy interviews, where usually we have 2 people involved, so there'll be a lead person who's working through a discussion guide. I'll put some images there of discussion guides, but these discussion guides are really there we need them for ethics, but they're also there to help us understand and guide a conversation. And it is really about triggering the conversation and making people feel comfortable enough to discuss their current circumstance, what's important to them, and a lot of the questions are open questions, so we try and stimulate some sort of interesting conversation where we are listening for insights and understanding that we can gather from the discussion. So 2 people, 1 person reading, the other person recording and catching in interesting angles that we could be questioning in. Like I said, during COVID, this has been kind of challenging, so we're developing ways of doing this remotely, but still getting interesting results, because it's not a questionnaire, a yes or no, or a scale rating of what you think about something. It's really an open discussion, and there's still a lot to be gained. The other important thing that we do at this stage is go and observe what's going on in situations. So usually we get to go inside in this case, we go inside the emergency department. We're able to observe and see how it operated. We were able to see how cannulation operated, how patients were treated, etc. At the moment, we're trying to work around that by asking our clinical partners to video and take images for us and convey information that we need for it. And if we can't take video, sometimes we record things through sketches as well. So the image down the bottom is, we did a project with Australian Lifeblood, and we couldn't take images inside the donation centre, but we had someone there, like a court-style recording of just sketching what the situation looked like. Another thing we try and do is really discover or understand who are we designing for, so who are the stakeholders. We sometimes use this, or often use this stakeholder map, which is quite a simple thing but an interesting exercise to go through. A target stock type map, and you put the most important person that you feel in your challenge in the middle, and then you start adding in all the other stakeholders that are involved in this problem in relationship to that person who's in the middle. So in this case, it's the patient, the doctors, the context they're in. Maybe it's aged care, maybe it's hospitals, maybe it's oncology. And that works all the way out to, the hospital executives who are also stakeholders in IV cannulation. Then we would think about, okay, who's the end user and who is the customer? So often the person who's using the product isn't necessarily the customer. So in this case, the patient and the doctors are the end users, and the customer is probably the purchasing department, the hospital administration, who would put in the order for something like this. So the reason we're doing all of this, of course, remember, is we're trying to really understand what's going on for the people involved in the problem that we're trying to address. So once we've gathered all of this information, we create personas, and personas are really interesting because they're just representative people or people profiles, if you like. They're not a real person, but they do. They're made up of all the information of the people that we've actually spoken to. So what we understand them to be like. So they're a generalised kind of person. So this is the persona that we created for the doctor in this case. So here we put something about her bio, what is she like as a person, what her goals are, what motivates her, what frustrates her, what sort of personality we expect her to be, typically for maybe a doctor profile, the technology, her relationship to technology, and the type of technology she uses. And we did this for doctors, a nurse, and a patient. Okay, so we do this so we can take it into the next stage, which is all about working with in a workshop situation, so that people, when we're sitting around in a workshop trying to design for these people, we can actually look at these personas and really empathise with them and try and put ourselves in their shoes. Going into the context of going to the hospital to understand what happens when a person is cannulated. So we look at the before, during and after, usually. This is the best way of doing it. So we create journey maps, which are really interesting because you can go through step by step what's happening at a particular moment in time through before the procedure, during the procedure, and after the procedure. And we can do it through different lenses. So in this case, this shows the experience of the nurse during the cannulation. And then we're understanding at that point in time, when she's doing a particular procedure, what she's thinking. And we understand that from the interviews we had. What she's feeling about things, these feelings would have been expressed in the discussions we had. And then from there, we've got this issue line where we try and, per step, try and understand, okay, what's the problem at that point in time? And then what could be a possible opportunity? So we're already starting to hone in on all the little opportunities along the way. Another tool we use, which is kind of similar, is that in that we're talking issues and opportunities, is then we move on to try and understand from everything we've learned, what's really the grand challenge or the game changer. So we say something, this is a statement that we kind of came to after all of our research, that would be game changing to guarantee accuracy, simplify procedure, and reduce infection and waste. So then we started to map out, and this is done, we can do it together with the people we're working with, mapping out an issue, and then from an issue, directly saying, okay, what's the opportunity here? And you can quickly start to assemble really good ground field for the next step of designing solutions. So with all of that in the background, the next stages, and I've really just condensed this into one slide for the sake of this presentation. But a lot of our work as designers, we probably spend a lot of our time discovering this define stage. I reckon half the project is spent in that stage, and then you move into workshops, concepts, and designing something. So during this particular workshop, a number of themes came out of it in terms of education around cannulization, the patient experience, the certainty for the nurse and the clinician actually putting in the IV, and the issues of sustainability about how IV is presented to the clinicians and what happens to the material around that. So a few of the concepts I've shown here is, around education is that stop graphic is really around just when somebody grabs an IV, a clinician grabs an IV, it just really begs them to stop and think about, is this really necessary? Does this need to go in? IVs around packaging and step-by-step walkthrough of what needs to happen, and really clear segmentation between the sterile parts of the kit and the non-sterile, because often these are presented in one mixed or one big box full of all different parts, so it's quite a task and a procedure to get all the elements in place for cannula to insert the cannula. And then also engaging with the patient in the cannula itself, call nurse if in pain, because often the cannula stays in for too long, and in the rush of the hospital, it might get lost on the patient as well, so it's in there for far too long and it gets infected. So this is about involving the patient in their own care as well. So that was all I was going to share about the nebulisation project. I've just got a few more slides to say that that was a design project that went for a whole year. It was an Innovation Connection grant that led to these results, and then the Multivate has gone on with some patenting, and they're going on to develop one of the packs. But sometimes human-centered design approach can be applied in a very small way, but have quite a nice effect as well. So I'm just showing you this small intervention. We've got Monash is part of there's a Kunshan, a research space over in Kunshan in China, and there's a company there called Vapor Health that make nebulizers for people, children, but also they make nebulizing wards or suites for wards, like what's pictured here. So what happens in China is people that need, usually here you'd have your own nebulizing unit at home, but in China, patients travel into a central hospital, they see a clinician, and then the child is a children's hospital. They're treated with their nebulized medicine on the spot. And this company was making these units where there was this funny little bear-shaped control face that had a bit of entertainment for the child while they were receiving their medicine. They usually sit there for about 20 minutes. It had this funny little control panel that also had the nurse's control built into it, because it kind of made sense, I guess, for them to put everything on the one circuit board. But from a usability point of view, it was a bit of it could be improved. So what we did was work together with, we went on site and observed how they were being used, and we identified there were three main users, the child, the parent, and the nurse. And then we went through an empathy mapping exercise, and this is a really nice exercise to do as well, maybe put in a bag of tricks, is just thinking about the experience from a stakeholder's point of view. You know, what's happening around them, what are they doing, how are they feeling, what must they be thinking, what are they hearing, and just imagining or seeing and witnessing what their pain points are, and what possible gains there could be, or what are the needs that could be satisfied by an intervention. So going through this process really started to inform this new layer, which they produced in China within like 2 months. They've made something. Look, it's from a design point of view, it's still got a little bit of work to go, but at least there's segregated controls. It's just a bit more usable for the people involved. And just 2 more slides. So this slide I'm just adding in because I was kind of asked to speak about it, but this is a project that I was involved in with, when I worked at Philips. who works for a company called Medico, which got hold of this amazing research being done by a professor in Eastern Europe that proved or showed that or indicated there was a correlation between the onset of asthmatic episodes and an increase in exhaled breath temperature. So we worked with Medico to create a unit, the left-hand side unit, which is really a unit was to have 2,000 units that could go into a clinical trial. So doctors will trial with their patients in clinic, but then they might send the device home with their patients to monitor their exhaled breath temperature over time. So that was an example of trying to think about the end user, in this case being a child. So we built in some lighting into the nozzle that the child grew into, because they actually needed to blow into it for up to a minute, which is quite a long time. So we needed to engage them in the process. And then also thinking about production techniques. It's a small production line, so the base of the unit we worked together with furnace, who were able to get the existing larger furnace flasks and create a modified die for us to make a small one. But we learned a lot out of that, and that's still around from a commercial point of view for doctors to use. And then later on, the idea, the technology was improved, and they were able to move it on to creating this Exhalo Pro, which is a really, the stem is an easy handheld blow-into device for children. This is a project that we're doing together with Dr. Tim J. Allen and Jason Brinker, who have developed some amazing microfluidics technology. If you're lucky, you can see it working. There we go. So the idea of this is that it can really create really small particles of medicine. In this case, we were targeting asthmatics as well, but it could be used in any type of medical application really. And then we were thinking about who uses nebulizers most in asthma. We thought about children, although the guy there is not quite a child, but it would be the shape of the device was informed by the application of this technology is when the medicine atomizes, you just get just enough, a small dose of it to go deep into your lung, and it's activated when you just breathe it in. And so we just created this handheld device. So it's a different form factor. Of course, the IP is IP around technology, and now we've got some design registration around the device and some interest around that as well. Listen, and my final slide is the other day I had a meeting with this lovely colleague, Professor Gil Garnier, who's the director of BioPrea, which is an institute of Monash University specialising in materials and chemical engineering. And together we're designing, we've got an innovation connection grant working with a company called QuickSmart to design a new way of, a new type of passing tray, which is ecologically sound, it's sustainable, recyclable, but also easy to use. There's a lot of things around it. So something like this tray that's pictured there. But in this meeting it was really quite cool because the QuickSmart partners were asking Gil for lots of information around the technology, and materials and specs and all the rest of it. And of course he's got it all. But basically he said, no, he said, there are only 3 steps. He said the first step is the need. We need to understand what the people's needs are, person's needs are, and also what the company's needs are. Then we can design, that will inform a product design, and then we will worry about the technology. So that was his approach, and I thought, wow, I'm glad I'm working with you. Okay, that's all I was going to share with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Daphne. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, beautiful. So we've just got a couple of questions for you before we let you go.
Sure.
So we've got one question from Julie, and she's asking, as Monash moves towards net zero emissions, have you noticed a shift towards more sustainable solutions? Are there goals to ensure the product is good for the stakeholder and for the environment?
Yeah, to be honest, you know, we a lot of our work so far, yes, when we're talking about consumables, we always think about sustainability, but it's actually an area where we've been thinking since we've got to know Gilles Garnier as well and talking to him, that we really need to bolster our expertise in this area because, yes, it's increasingly important.
Yep. We've got another question from Haruka, and asking, the way in which design is taught in universities is still very much leans towards product solutions. Is there a need for change in this sense?
Yes, I agree with you. We do need to change. We need to start off with what are the needs?
Yep.
What the challenge is, and then let that dictate whether it's going to be a product or a piece of communication or an experience. So definitely.
Beautiful. Yeah, thank you. And one final question before we wrap up the last session. So Kiara's asking, how does one get involved in Health Collab for students?
Oh, we'd love you to be involved in Health Collab. So please reach out to me, send me an email, and let's have a discussion. Because I know in the past we've been having some discussions with MYMI people who are interested in trying to figure out some sort of collaboration. So yes, we're always, you know, our doors are open. So please drop me an email, and I'd love to discuss with you.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you so much for that talk, Daphne. So we do know that you're having some technical issues with your audio, but I'm sure that if Kiara would send you direct message and Amy and other students would like to send you direct message and Amy, you'll be around for a little bit to check that out. So yeah, if you'd like to get in touch with Professor Daphne Flynn, send her a message on
and also
Amy.
An eye out. And MYMI, we get involved with MYMI every end of the year in their summer activities. So keep an eye out for that as well.
Yep, beautiful. Thank you so much. So I'll pass over to Carlin now, who'll give the ending remarks for this session.
Thank you.
No worries.
Okay, so thanks, Leia and Daphne.
We are offline now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your talk. Hop on the Amy.
No worries. Okay, so thanks, Leia and Daphne. And that concludes our second session of the MYMI Summit. We had a really great lineup of talks that we hope you enjoyed. If you have any further questions, feel free to send it directly to a moderator or simply join a table of one of the speakers following the session. So thank you for listening. Sorry it went a bit longer than expected, but
everyone, hope that you guys have all had a time to network and chat with one another. Welcome to the third session of the summit. This session will be all about the MYMI projects team, you know, what we've been up to, and we've even got my friends from Toucan Medical and Laura, our very own projects director, running a panel today. So we're going to get started with our first presentation of this session, which is from Eliza. She is the project lead for Project QWERTY, and she's going to tell you about all of the things that her team is working on. So Eliza, I'll pass that on to you.
All right, thank you. I'm just going to share screen. All right, so hopefully we can see that. Can we see that? All right, I'm going to assume that it's working. So my name's Eliza, and I'm one of the co-leads for Project QWERTY. So I thought I would take you on the same journey that Project QWERTY has been on over almost the last 12 months. So taking you through our initial identify phase, moving on to our ideation, and finally where we are now, which is our implementation phase. So this all started with the Healthcare Innovation Summer Scholarship Program. Tim and I were members of the program, and as part of it, we got paired with two clinical champions. So we got paired with Jenny and Grace, who were two speech pathologists who worked with Monash Health. So what Jenny and Grace specialise in is aphasia rehabilitation. So aphasia is a language disorder that results from stroke. About 1 in 3 stroke survivors experience aphasia, and to the extent that it's very different for each person. So some people will experience very severe aphasia, where others might experience more mild forms. Severe aphasia, though, has the largest negative impact on quality of life, greater than cancer or Alzheimer's disease. And this is very daunting, but you can often think of it at the person level. So throughout the project, one of the people we worked with, his name was Chris, and he was someone who had aphasia after his stroke. For Chris, after his stroke, he was unable to even write or say his own name. This kind of ability to no longer be able to be who you were is incredibly difficult for people, and they often have to leave work and lose a sense of empowerment within their lives. People with aphasia retain all their intelligence. What is broken is the communication from brain to mouth, or brain to hand. So through practice and repetition, some of this can be regained. So looking at all the different tools for aphasia on the market, there are many, many available. And one of the strongest things is the work of speech pathologists. But we needed more than that. And so we came up with needing a solution. And the most important things was that our solution be independent and individualized. So independent that aphasia patients could use the tool by themselves, allowing them to feel empowered when often that is a huge thing that is lost when they experience the condition. And secondly, we want it to be individualized. While there's a lot of different programs out there, there are very few that focus on what people really need. For some, this is relearning family members' names after stroke, being able to write your own address, being able to communicate your workplace, your profession, which are all major parts of your identity. And so while it is helpful to relearn horse, cat, banana, they're not really the things that are at the front of people's mind. So to ensure any solution was independent, we implement errorless learning. This is learning that recognizes errors and prompts users to correct them. Secondly, we focused on customizable word lists, really allowing people to focus on what is important to them, which helps motivate people to work, but really is about empowering the patient. So then we moved on to the ideate phase. If these were our aims, what possible ways could we achieve them? We spent a long time in this space thinking of different solutions, from mechanical typewriters to more one-on-one conversations, to looking at different ways we use technology within the setting and how we could use it to improve the rehabilitation experience. After considering many of these options, we ended up with 3 main criteria. We decided that we needed a digital solution. A digital solution would allow us to implement this errorless learning and allow people to work independently, as well as giving much greater scope for customization that we couldn't achieve with mechanical devices. Secondly, we wanted it to work in with existing solutions. So people with aphasia often have to leave their employment. So along with experiencing a life-changing condition, there often is associated financial difficulties. So we didn't want to increase the burden by requiring people to have to purchase another tool or something else. Finally, we wanted the solution to have longevity. So this project was started as part of our university degrees, and at some point we would graduate and maybe move into different fields. We wanted to ensure that the project would be able to go on without the direct leadership. So what we settled on was a web-based app. This was based on an app called Typing Therapy that had been designed by one of Jenny and Grace's colleagues, Ben. So we kind of changed it a little bit and decided on a web-based app rather than something you could purchase from the Apple Store or the Google Store. This allowed something to be longevity without needing the same level of regulation. It also is designed to be optimized for iPad, as many of aphasia's solutions already rest on using iPads, as well as gave us the best chance to implement our errorless technology. So with this solution, we began the cycle of building, measuring, and learning. So as you can see, we worked very hard to test multiple different wireframes and different looks for our app. And at each stage, after each version, we would measure and talk to people with aphasia and talk to speech pathologists. By talking to our end users, we were able to improve our product, and we were able to understand more about what we wanted to achieve. I think this was the most important phase to implement people with aphasia, and we made sure we spoke to people